Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough was published in 2020, followed by Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, followed by Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. And this year, July 19th of 2024, Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through Foster Care and Court Systems came out as a bestseller. Feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I've got two brand new guests. I have Bob and Laura Domek on. CPS has kidnapped their children and then allowed the biological father to see the older two children after he'd been absent for 8 years and signed over his rights while it was against CPS aftercare recommendations. And this is happening to so many parents, I would say globally. And I welcome you, Bob and Laura Domek. Where are you at with all of this right now?
Right now, they have terminated our parental rights. They did that on July 18th. We had asked for ADA court access. I have been on disability since 2011. My husband has been on disability, or not disability, been retired since 2016, and he's 67, has had a heart attack and some kidney issues, and they denied it. So then the judge only gave us a phone call, and I started saying things that I don't think she cared for, like I was claiming fraud upon the court. And I have presented many affidavits and paperwork. I am pro per, not pro se. I'm pro per.
Okay.
Um, so I am representing myself. I have recently gotten in touch with someone named Brittany, who is an ADA advocate that I hope is going to help me with this. We just chatted over the weekend and got things settled yesterday. So we're
Good.
definitely going to have to work on some tort claims and some federal stuff, because I've tried at the level that we're at, and we have to go higher because they're not even following the law. You had someone on named Jay, and he said, according to 28 CFR 35 1.6B2, I think it was, they can't even ask us why we're not attending. And our judge not only not asked us, she hung up on us, and when we first came to the phone, she badgered us. It continued through last week. My husband's sister had died. Now, keep you in mind, they sent our daughter illegally and unlawfully to Arkansas from Kentucky back in November to live with my husband's sister. She died about 2 weeks ago. The funeral was last Thursday. We tried to get our daughter to be able to go to the funeral. My daughter has one grandparent living. She is 88 years old, and she was going to be at the funeral. And they again denied ADA access. I have text messages of my lawyer saying I needed to come up with a better reason, and she had to have all my health reasons. And I just kind of said, I don't even need a doctor's note. Like, I have been on, and I've been studying the law. Our case has been going on since February 14th of 2022. So,
And
you
that's
got anything you want to
Valentine's
add?
Day.
No, he pretty much covered it.
Now that's, of course, they did this to you on a holiday, which is Valentine's Day.
Right.
Have you noticed that they bother you around certain anniversaries? I found that with other people I talk to as well as myself.
Yes, I have. I actually married my ex on Valentine's Day. So, and he had started contacting the children before, and I went to court and they did nothing. He was a violent man. He killed his own father at 14 and was a convicted felon. And I mean, they essentially took the kids from me and my husband and put them and let them go with a youth pastor that was 24 years old, who let my children see their biological dad with no supervisor. But us who aren't convicted felons, we had to have a supervisor. So everything that we were doing, it's like a mind control. They come in, they supervise your visits. They tell you what you can say, what you can't say. There's no constitutional rights, freedom of speech, any of that.
And how much do they charge you for your supervised visits?
$120 an hour if we do it here in Louisville. Now, our case is in a different county. We've also asked for the last 2.5 years to our attorneys and our workers and the judge if we could get it moved to our county.
Mhm.
And they haven't done that. I think it's because it's probably the SSAQB trust fraud. They don't want to let go of us. And see, my daughter has a cystic fibrosis diagnosis, so I know that they get even more federal money per day with her being special needs. And cystic fibrosis is one of those kind of heavy diagnoses. I've heard as much as 30 grand a day.
I've heard that too. These are just kids for cash scheme.
Our daughter used to cry. I mean, she was only 5 when it started. I don't know how anyone can say that they're with a straight face that they have the best interest of the child when they're doing things like they're doing. My child's been emotionally damaged over them. I mean, and a 1.5 years into it, she finally said, well, I'm starting to get used to it. I'm not crying every day.
Oh,
I mean, their failure to assess the kids and to keep making up these falsified reports. What had happened is, and what took us so long is they put us for a forensic mental evaluation, which I found out is one of their tricks. And we had already gotten a case plan and completed it. We went and got DV assessments, a substance abuse assessment, and a mental evaluation from a place called Everlasting Arms, and those all cleared us. But then they were still pushing for this forensic mental evaluation that took 1 year to get into. And on that, in that report, which they will not give us, we cannot have a copy to read ourselves. One of the first things it says in there is that Bob hit Sarah when she's trying to hug him. And then just all the lies in it are so bad, and they won't even give me a copy where I can go through and correct it. So I just kind of feel like I don't need their help. At least I'm not a liar. Until they can get over their lying, they don't need to be helping anybody. They need to go help themselves.
They thrive on false accusations.
Yes. Well, and some of mine involves gang stalking. And I mean, just, I've had the most horrible, she says monsters are following her. I've never said that. And I got stuff like that in the reports. And then what it's done to the extended family. My husband has a 36-year-old son and 2 grandchildren. He has a 30-year-old son. But the 36-year-old was told that I was on meth. Okay, and I went to the doctor the day after the children were taken, and CPS's hair follicle tested me. So they know that I'm not on meth. But yet that rumor got spread. It was like whatever they could do to take away any of our support. Here we think we're getting CPS to come in and help, but they take away all our support.
So
because Bob's oldest son hasn't wanted him around, or me, not necessarily Bob, because he thinks I'm on meth and he trusts the government over us.
And this is how all this started, was a false accusation that you were using meth.
No, it started, my children, my first marriage was, it was a domestic violence relationship. They did witness abuse, and my children were in a real big habit of hitting me. And they had been diagnosed with ADHD and ODD and RAD and PTSD. So my oldest son was not following instructions. He was, or not my oldest, my middle. He was 16 at the time, and we were going to a hotel, and he wouldn't get in the car, and we've had to do it before when he wouldn't go to like Arkansas and stuff. So I called the cops,
Mm-hmm.
and the cops, my son ended up, after knowing, I called the cops because my son was threatening to call CPS. So after knowing that me and my son are in accusation, and we lived in a small community, Vine Grove, so we kind of knew the cops. I'm losing my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's not your fault. But the cops called CPS, and I called them on my son, and he ran out and said that I strangled him when I didn't. But my point is, the cops had already known that we were having, issues. But that's not what happened at all. They took the kids, put them in the cop car, wouldn't let me talk to them. And then they talked to one of my children in my neighbor's yard for like an hour. And then CPS asked me to sign the paperwork, and I would not. I said, "Can I speak with you tomorrow?" And she said yes. And then they had court and everything without either one of us even knowing. She never called us back the next day. Our investigator worker never even got back with us. So we had a court date neither of us knew about. And that's just kind of how that went.
I've heard this a lot too, I'm sorry to say.
The thing is, we have no harm, and everything is all made up accusations. Our daughter's losing two good parents. I was a special needs teacher before being on disability. My husband raised his 30-year-old. We actually met when I put my sons in Boy Scouts, and my husband was the scoutmaster. So he was very active in working with kids for 20 years. And they tell me I can go back and be a teacher. I can have a classroom full of 30 people, strangers, kids, or children, but I can't have my own. Does that even make sense?
I've actually heard that statement 2 times this past week out of other parents' mouths. That they can be a teacher, but they can't have their own kids.
Right, yeah. See, I was teaching Sunday school at church too. It isolated us from all that. It's just CPS comes in and starts separating everything. I mean, with the family and the church and the lies they tell, do you know what it's like to have everybody thinking that you're doing math? I mean,
yeah. Did they ask both of you to get a divorce at all?
Yes.
That's another.
Of course they did.
Yes. They do this all the time. When you look back, do you think you could have done or should have done something different in the beginning? Or is there there was no way to handle this at all?
I don't think there was a way to handle it at all. I think part of why they came after us in particular is my husband is retired, and he was getting, so much per child per month, and we had 3 dependents on his Social Security. So when they took our 3 kids, they took $2,700 a month of our income, and then they still charged child support. And then one day just up and took it all out of our bank account because we were trying to tell them we don't need to pay this, and we couldn't make the court date. We weren't given a lawyer. I have a lawyer in the abuse and neglect case that keeps telling me I had a lawyer in the child support case, but I don't know. That lawyer's never contacted me. But we did. We woke up one day and had not a penny to our name because they tried to take all $1,200 out for child support at one time out of our bank account. And it's so interesting that the judge's husband just so happened to work at the bank that we had our funds placed in.
That's
so, and that caused the repossession of our van. Because I mean, when you wake up with penniless and we're already, disabled and on Social Security, they are coming after the weak people. I feel like,
Uh-huh.
between the disabilities and the low income, it's like they're just trying to take the easy ones out, I guess. I don't know how to.
Well, they saw money. They smelled money. So when they took your girls, what happened?
Well, the older two are boys. Our youngest one is the only girl. They went with our youth pastor. Um, my daughter was 5. We were paying $450 a month to have her in a Christian school. CPS put her with people that they called a fictive kid because my boys had had him as a youth pastor at church. He was only 24 years old, and he had a wife. His wife taught at my daughter's school, and she flunked kindergarten because the youth pastor and his wife passed her around the church like a hot potato. So then we got to pay $450 a month for another whole year. When this first started out, we had 2 houses. So we have sold one. My oldest turned 18 on May 18th of 2022. And on that day, he decided to move in with biological father. Biological father gave him and I usually call him sperm donor. So I'm trying to be nice. And it's not that I don't
It's okay.
have any love for this man. It's just he had no right raising any kind of kids.
Right.
But anyway, so he tells my 18-year-old son that he's going to give him a Allegra, and it's Viagra, and then laughs for, poisoning him some more.
Oh,
And that is something he kept saying in the past, that he was poisoning my son during visitation, and my son would come home with 105 temperatures. I would take him to the hospital, and they would say, give him ibuprofen, Tylenol, and Pedialyte. I would do that, and he would be down to like 103 temperature, miss a week of school, and he'd be sick. Now I think it was this radio frequency poisoning stuff or some of this nanotechnology that was making him so sick. But the doctors never really did anything. I ended up discovering something called ionic foot detoxes. So when my son came home with 105 temperature, we just put him in an ionic foot detox, and his temperature was down to 99 after 40 minutes of detoxing. So we know it was some kind of toxin.
yeah, that's so weird. I've heard of that foot detox that you soak your feet in.
Yes, I had pictures of parasites, and you detox chemicals, you detox metals. But of course, they won't recognize that. And with my daughter having CF, it really helped her with some of the buildup, the mucus buildup that you get with CF. But they won't recognize any kind of holistic health care in our forensic mental evaluation. As a matter of fact, in my real counselor that I was seeing on a weekly basis highly disagreed with the forensic mental evaluator, but they said it would do no good for her to testify because the forensic mental evaluator had a higher level of education, more letters behind her name per se. So,
Jeez. Oh.
So she didn't testify, but she argued with her, and she argued a lot about it being against the code and ethics. And in my forensic report, it says that I can have no faith-based counselor and I can use no holistic health.
That you can't have a no faith-based, if I
Yes.
Oh. What are they doing?
I have no idea. I've been trying to figure it out. I've put in affidavits, a testimony in the form of an affidavit stating that our report was full of perjury. I've called the Kentucky psychology examiners. I didn't call, I wrote a formal complaint. I sent it registered mail. They did, I guess, send notice that the doctor had 20 days to reply. But after the doctor replied, they let it go. So I don't know what to do about that to hold them accountable. I am an American state national. I'm no longer a U.S. citizen. So that's, it puts me in a different bracket. I'm in a different jurisdiction automatically. You know, I've tried to do that to be peacefully. I've actually put liens on my judge, my CPS worker. I mean, I've done due process. I've sent them their 3 notices, you know, their true bill. I've given them warning, please return my daughter. This is kidnapping, and I'm not going to call it anything else now.
It is kidnapping.
That's the only way to look at it, and it hurts very, very bad. Like the litigation abuse syndrome, that's a for real thing. You get PTSD just going through court. They don't let you speak. They have some kind of agenda that they're planning. Before you even, we would get there at 8 o'clock. They would make us sit in the courtroom or courthouse for 3 hours until 11 when they would finally call our case just to get another day. I mean, and we're driving an hour away. And I just feel like when it comes to trying to accommodate us whatsoever, they have not. Between my husband's age and my disability, our case should have been moved to our county that we live in. On March 28th, my daughter moved to her 5th foster home. And we have not seen or had a supervised visitation since March 27th. This foster home is with a third cousin in Indiana that I'm not very close with. I usually see once a year on Thanksgiving, but it's family. So they're not even supposed to terminate my parental rights while she's with family. And they did. Without us present.
Oh, sorry.
But when we got that piece of paper in the mail, we just wrote non-negotiable on it and put it right back. Because just because pirates have my daughter does not change our right to her.
Right.
Like I've thought about calling missing children or making a missing children's report or calling the military. It's like, what can we really do? We are these single parents taking on an army of the government because you got CASA workers, you got a prosecutor, then you got your counselors, your judge. I mean, and if they're all on the same team and nobody's advocating for you, it's like you're the low man on the totem pole and just being bullied to death. And they do it to your child too, because I don't know, maybe CPS doesn't realize it, but when you hurt a parent or you hurt a child, you're hurting the parent or the child. If you hurt my child, it's going to hurt me. It's going to hurt my husband. If you hurt my child, or if you hurt us, it's going to hurt my child. When my sister died, the foster parents gave us a phone call, and we hadn't seen her since May 18th, and this was on August 16th when she passed, which just so happens to be the day my daughter was conceived. So there's that date thing. But she called, and the foster parent immediately gets on the phone and starts yelling at us. Now, keep in mind, my husband just found out his sister died. And we're getting yelled at about there's going to be rules. You can't say this. You can't say that. I don't want to hear about your sovereign citizen, which we are not sovereign citizens. That is that's an oxymoron. We are American state nationals. And I was in the position where I was a transhuman DARPA slave without even the right to live. And maybe some people need to check out their political statuses. Because if they have you marked as a slave, they're doing whatever they want to you anyway. And I know a lot of people going through you know, the 2020 thing and getting the thing,
Cake, cake.
The cake.
getting the cake.
Eating the cake.
Now I done lost my train of thought.
2020.
2020.
I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That has been one of my biggest concerns, though, about her being in custody is they're experimenting on some of these kids. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I worry about that medically, you know, with some of the things they have out that like came out in 2020.
Well,
I
that, yeah,
really didn't want that to take place.
right. And other experimental medications that they're using these foster kids as guinea pigs.
Right, kind of like what the AIDS thing did.
Right.
I mean, and that was some of the worst thing I ever seen, but it's the same person behind it. So,
Mm.
you know, but yes, you worry about that kind of stuff. And she's already got the cystic fibrosis. And then you worry about, you know, straight up, you worry about sex trafficking. I
Mhm.
mean, she's a little girl too with that. I mean, I know it doesn't matter nowadays if you're a girl or a boy, but you know, and I happen to think she's beautiful.
I think so. Oh.
So, you know, you hear a lot of stories and people that grew up in foster care or CPS's custody, and that's a lot of the little girls' stories.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there's so
I know I told my CASA worker, I said, well, you know, Bill Clinton and Epstein had pictures together. And she called me a conspiracy theorist. And I'm thinking, well, where else did they get the kids on that island? I mean, I know they had bunkers in Arizona. I've been researching the
Mhm.
CPS stuff for a while because it just doesn't make sense for strangers to come in and act like they have the best interest of your child more than you. You know, my husband and I created her. And my husband was 59 when she was born, and I was 38. She was like our miracle child, and
Mhm.
both of ours only girl. We got 4 boys and 1 girl.
Oh.
So, and she knows she's our miracle baby. She's, you know, I was disabled. I was disabled from 2011. I didn't have her until 2016. They didn't think I was going to be able to have children. I have the fibromyalgia, the Hashimoto's, PCOS, endometriosis. My
Mhm.
husband had prostate cancer.
Mm.
So she really is a miracle baby.
Mm.
And we've done everything to protect her as much as we could, keeping her off as much medicine, you know, with her having the cystic fibrosis.
Mhm.
And I must have been doing pretty good because she hasn't needed the breathing treatments. Her sodium chloride test are like 31, and they're supposed to be 59 or higher to show full-blown cystic fibrosis. So she's kind of asymptomatic at the moment, but they have detected 2 DNA chromosomal mutations that align with the cystic fibrosis diagnosis.
Mhm. And she was doing so well with you, and you don't know how she's doing now.
No, we don't.
Mm.
We do know that she flunked kindergarten when they first took her. And, you know, we had things, just certain things I wouldn't do as their mother. You know, I've seen her come to our visitation with holes in her clothes, which, you know, I just wouldn't, she wouldn't have had that with me. Gum in her hair. Thank God I had lavender oil and I'm, you know, an aromatherapist because she came to one visit and had gum in her hair. Another visit, you know, we're checking her hair for lice. She had the lice. I mean, it's just, yes. And in our termination of parental rights, it says that we cannot provide housing, food, clothing, and shelter.
Mm.
Well, we paid $450 for 2 years for her to go to a private school. We already have clothes to like size 11, 12. We had 2 houses when this started. We still have one.
Mhm.
We sold one to pay for my son to move into a townhome after he moved in with his biological dad. That was one of my brain farts, as I like to call them, that I was having earlier. Because, you know, we paid $850 and my son's all of his bills for a year after he moved in with him. And then both my sons ended up recommitting to CPS. The whole time they had them, they were like, well, you know, if you age out in foster care, then you get free college and free room and board. So my children were even bribed from
Uh,
the very beginning to stay in state's custody. It's disgusting, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
That
I
they can come in and separate families like this.
The thing is, to my knowledge, I don't think they get free college. That
Both of mine are. One's at University of Kentucky, and the other one is at Elizabethtown Technical and Community College or something like the ETCT.
Oh, maybe that's different from state to state. Because yeah, I've never heard that, but you know, maybe anything to get the kid away from the parents.
Yeah, well, I mean, my oldest son did not recommit right away. That's why we ended up paying for his townhome for a year. And then he watched, boys are only 13 months apart. So then he watched his other brother turn 18,
Mhm.
and he, you know, started at UK and all that last August. And so then my other son recommitted in November.
Mm.
So, and I don't even really know what that means because they're adults at this point.
Right.
And, you know, I just know that it was a really crappy way. I never got both my boys aged out. So it was just kind of like they abruptly got taken and there was no closure. And, you know, most parents go through, you know, helping their kid get into college, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to see everybody's children going away to college and the parents taking pictures of their dorms and rooms. And, you know, here I'm like, my oldest got his Eagle. Um, and I'd been in scouts for 11 years with him.
Mhm.
So to not be invited to that or to not be able to take part in that when I had 11 years and my husband too, because keep in mind, he was the scoutmaster,
Mhm.
you know, of you know, what's the word, nurturing that child into getting Eagle. I mean, 11 years we spent going to campouts, you
Mhm.
know, we worked derby so that they could do their campouts for 11 years. And I didn't even get to witness any of that because
Yeah.
of the way that CPS came in. I mean, it's just what they've done to our family and what we've worked for. And then for me being a domestic violence victim, okay, for starters, they made me send my children to this man before he signed over his rights to my husband
Mm.
with reports of me saying he was poisoning them,
Mhm.
with reports of my mother saying that he was poisoning them and my husband. So we had to continue to let them keep seeing this man until he signed over his rights. And I just think that it's crazy because they are protecting the criminals.
Right. Ugh.
I mean, and he was always like, well, I pay child support. Well, I mean, he never bought them any clothes.
Mm-mm.
He never, he wouldn't go to any of the events. You know, when I asked him about camping out with him, oh, no, that's not for me. You know, and then I have like his verbal testimonies and being through the domestic abuse. And I just cannot believe that they literally took my kids
Mhm.
and right away turned them over to somebody. And, you know, I had worked hard to overcome the domestic violence. Um, you know, I had a nice new marriage, you know, our new daughter, we don't have domestic violence in this marriage. So it's just, instead of making progress, it's like we went backwards. And they claim that they make progress or that they help. That's the worst thing. CPS claims that they help when all it is a money laundering scheme.
Mhm. I agree with you there. Ugh.
I mean, my personal opinion, I think CPS needs to be liquidated.
Mhm.
And I did use, you know, like I said, I was a teacher. I know that there are a few, maybe 0.1% of children out there that really do need to be taken from their parents. I
Mhm.
mean, because of abuse or, you know, but they're stretching it too far. And Bill Clinton's Protection and Permanency Act law, that ASPA stuff, that just made it so much worse. If you really look at history and you look at the CPS cases from that moment forward, they've like grown. So it's like when he made that law, what, all of a sudden everybody became abusers, or
Right.
y'all
Yeah.
started getting money incentives, financial incentives.
Yeah. Yep. It's all about the money. It's
And that's been one of my arguments, is that CPS cannot state the best interest of my child having the financial stake that they do.
Mhm. What a shame. So your daughter's with a family member in Indiana, and that family member doesn't even let you talk to her.
Exactly. Because CPS has told them that we have to be um, supervised on everything. I mean, and we've been asking to get unsupervised visits since they started.
Mhm.
And, eventually we seen that it didn't matter what we did, they were going to take our rights regardless. I mean, to show up, to have the judge call me in a TPR hearing, to have her totally hang up on me. She wasn't trying to get me my child back. She didn't have any kind of empathy on why I couldn't make it. She mocked me. I mean, it was humiliating. She wouldn't even allow a Zoom link. She only called us on the telephone, but she's on the telephone talking to the people in the courtroom while I know I'm sitting there on speaker, hounding me. I
Wow.
eventually told her I was having diarrhea,
Mhm, mhm,
because she had to have a reason why I wasn't there, even though I wasn't supposed to have to give her a reason. And I just can't get over that these judges and these lawyers are not following any laws. They're just following whatever they damn well please. Whatever has the most money attached to it, that's what they're doing.
mhm,
There's no laws. When you read ancient texts and the biblical texts and it says the end times will be lawlessness,
mhm,
that's what we got right here. Because I've gone in with the law, I've cited the law. I mean, and they just don't listen. That's why I say I have to go to a higher court. And it's sad because, I mean, ultimately, I think I'm going to end up having my judge's bench.
mhm,
She had just started. She was a CPS prosecutor weeks
mm,
before our case started. She got um, not really elected. She was the only one chosen in February of 2022
mhm.
to step up for another judge that was retiring. So, I mean, she was brand new to our case and had been prosecuting CPS cases. And to me, that's a conflict of interest. Like, I even filled out a judicial complaint form.
Mhm,
And then there's certain things, like I told her I was sensitive to EMF fields, which I am.
mhm.
And she wrote down on court documents that I said I had a microchip inside me controlling me.
Ugh.
And so all of my stuff says I'm severely mental impaired with these monsters following me, and these microchips inside me controlling me. I mean, it's the craziest story you could ever hear.
Mhm.
And when we did have our TPR, I'm on the Barbara Stone group. Have you heard of the We the People writ?
Yes.
Okay. So they are trying to have people come into your courtroom, and Barbara Stone has been asking for Zoom links.
Uh-huh.
Well, they told me they would not give me a Zoom link, and I think that's why they even denied my ADA, because they thought it was because I wanted people there.
Mm.
And I had asked before a counselor, someone on our Kentucky Assembly litigation team. I wanted him to help represent me. That was part of why I was asking for the Zoom link. But the judge told us that it was totally confidential. And I'm thinking, well, there was one
Mm.
other time when I asked for privacy and she told me it was a public hearing. So I don't know if it's just because we moved out of the neglect and abuse and into the TPR, if that made it confidential or what. But no TPR case, it's supposed to be a court of record. It's
Mhm.
supposed to be a public court hearing.
Mm.
You're supposed to get a trial by jury. These people are getting this corrupt crimes done because they're doing them behind the people's backs,
Mhm.
behind closed doors. Even
Mhm.
when we would go into court and sit there for 3 hours, they had to go into the little meeting room in front of the court first, that was still behind the closed doors with the bailiff there. And, they go in and discuss your whole case before you even walk in.
Mhm.
They already know what's going to happen before you walk in the courtroom. I mean, it's all planned out. It's not
It
like
is.
you're deciding anything in that court hearing.
That's what happened to me and other parents as well. They smell the money. Or they want to destroy you because really I didn't have any money. They had cost me my job, but yet they still went after me, even though the ex was a vice president of a company. So, I mean, really it should have been the other way around, right? But it wasn't. But
Right.
but for other parents, it's, they usually go after the one with the money. It's all about money, not gender. It's about the money.
Right. Um, I don't know. We on the assembly have we call it the dead baby scam. So
Mm,
we know that when we're born, that our birth certificate is a bond and that they have a Seste QV trust that they can go after. My ex had admitted to trying to kill me for that. And again, he murdered his own dad at 14. So
mhm,
um, that was a real big thing. I know a lot of people are reluctant to believe in the American state assemblies and Anna von Rice period, but if you really go back and look at our country, we this is not the American government. I mean, you have to know this is not what our forefathers
no.
were trying to get done. I mean, it's still what they're running from. We have a British thing, a British territorial government.
Mhm,
But my point is, even if you don't have money, because you brought that up, you didn't have much money, you have that trust. You have that trust that they can tap into.
mhm,
And every case number is a bond. So I
mhm,
mean, they're doing all kinds of financial stuff behind our backs that we have no idea even about.
mhm,
So I mean, because I've been disabled again since 2011. So I mean, to come after me, I didn't have any money, but I'm sure, and I haven't really researched into that trust. I've heard of some people in the assembly liquidating it, or but
mhm,
I'm sure that's what they're drawing it from when they go after the people without money. They still have these trusts that the government has for them because they're playing us like chattel. I
mhm.
mean, it's like we're sheep here.
Right, right. Yeah, I was talking to, another person this past week, and we were also saying this must be the end times because the judges are running rogue.
Well, what gets me is my judge and my CPS worker both have children.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you would just follow the golden rule, I
Right.
mean, then, but when I brought it up to my CPS worker, she brought it up like I was like I was threatening her or something with, with it. So, I'm not threatening to take your kid. I'm just asking, how would you feel
Mhm.
if it was your child and you were in my shoes?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I agree with you.
but they totally turned it around. No kind of heart for the people. Now, our first CPS worker, she did quit, and
Mhm.
I think it's because of what we were being put through. I
Yeah.
think it was watching us, and my husband during our first year had Achilles surgery. So I
Mhm.
mean, we're going to visits with him on a scooter, and you
Aw.
know, we're going to sky's the limit, and he's walking with this little scooter because he couldn't walk, and my daughter's all ready to take care of him. It was so precious.
Aw.
And I mean, we just missed all that. Um, normally she would have been taking care of daddy, loving daddy like he needed to be loved while he was injured. But we
Oh,
missed out on that because our government is a thief.
right, right. It's so heartbreaking, to hear your story, and it's very similar to one of my other friends' stories where the kids were taken away very abruptly and there was no closure. And it's just very hard to deal with when that happens. And going back to this relative of yours that has her, so they probably threatened your relative who's had her since March 20th,
28th, yes.
28th. I have it here for 27th too. Okay. But you know, they probably threatened that relative saying, if you let her talk to the parents, we're going to put this kid into a foster home. They probably did that. I'm sure they threatened.
I'm sure they probably have. I've begged them, my family, like no matter what, hold on to them. But after the phone call that we received after my husband's sister died, I mean, obviously there's little will or want to connect with those people because
Mhm.
you don't want anybody else saying anything else bad about you. So, I mean, if you can just stay away, you know what I mean? And that's what it's like CPS does. They get a little bandwagon going on who they can say bad things about the parents too.
Mhm.
And you know, this is not my first rendezvous with CPS. Um, my mother, when I left my ex and I was in the Center for Women and Families, she took my boys in '09. But it wasn't like I lived with my mother.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like I wasn't here parenting them, I guess is the thing. Um, the only thing we had major issues was when she put, and he's 19 now, but when he was 4, she put him on Adderall, and I had some big problems with the Adderall. Um, just because I didn't think that was needed for children. I mean, you know,
Right. Right.
you might as well go get you some meth from the streets or something.
Right.
I
Geez.
think they over medicate. And being a teacher, I've seen it a lot with the Ritalin and the Adderall. And
Mhm.
instead of, you know, children being able to be children, they're medicating them and zombifying them so that they can sit in a desk all day.
And not complain to the teacher. So, you know, and teachers are mandated reporters, so they
Right.
these kids up and keep them quiet so they can't complain.
Yeah. And it's awful because, yeah, I've witnessed that quite a bit in the school system too. So, um,
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's just so ongoing. With families, it just doesn't stop.
no, that's the sad thing. And they did hit like maybe 4 or 5 other people at our church. And then there was one that was really sad. The little girl's mom had gone to Illinois,
Mhm.
and her brothers were put in foster care, but her and her sister weren't. I'm not real sure what was going on. I was just working with them at our church, and 2 of her brothers were in foster care and committed suicide.
Oh.
And so then her sister moves out, gets married, and takes her, but she's got a mental disability. She's 21 now. Her name's Rivka. Oh, I
Mhm.
probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, they left her as an adult with a mental, and she's kind of got like a childlike mind. You can tell that, you know, she's not all there. Now her mother was on meth.
Mhm.
So, but they left her in a hospital from December until April. And she reached out to me on Facebook
Huh.
and she's like, "Oh, maybe they'll let you come see me. You used to teach me at church."
Oh.
And so I get on the phone with the nurse and she's like, "Oh, well, I have to have her social worker call you." So it's like, okay. The social worker calls me, I don't know, a day or 2 later, tells me she's taken out the girl's telephone out of her room. She's taking her tablet. She can have no outside visitation and she can have no phone calls. And it just, I mean, I said, "I'll do a background check. What do you need me to do to be able to come visit?" You know, I used to teach her. I'm no threat to her.
Mhm.
They totally locked down a mental patient in a hospital that wasn't even a mental hospital. It's just a regular hospital from December, about 2 weeks before Christmas, and they cut us off in April. So I quit speaking to her in April. I'm assuming if she gets a phone, she'll contact me again. But you know, I mean, that this is the kind of stuff they're doing. They're locking people away. She has no mother or father to take up for her. They removed her from the sister, so now they're just going to throw her in a hospital and treat her like a slave with no feelings. Or, I mean, it's bad enough for mental kids to be in one room all day, much less no activity, only a TV, you know, no people, only your nurses coming in and out. What is that really going to do to the mentality? Is it serving her for her benefit, because it doesn't seem like it. I mean, if I was locked in a hospital room, I'd probably go crazy.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
Oh, she wants me to talk.
Yeah, I asked you to unmute Bob. There you go.
I did.
What do you have to say about all this?
Well, I don't know what more I can add to that because Laura likes to talk.
She did well.
Yeah, she did. Yes, she did. No, it's just been a nightmare. Um, Trenton hit me one night, and Tyler called the cops. The cops came and they arrested Trenton for hitting me. I never hit him. I
Mhm.
just restrained him, and so he went to juvenile detention. When we get to court, they turned it around on me and charged me with the domestic violence because I must have did something to cause him to hit me.
Oh,
And
So-
he had, tell her you had black eyes and blushed.
So, in our reporter TPR report, it says continued abuse and neglect. They don't have 1 ounce of proof of any continued abuse of neglect. The only ones that abused and neglected were the boys
mhm.
because they came from domestic violence. They came from CPS cases. They were used to it. I've never had domestic violence in my house until they came in. Nothing. And they know this. There's no proof of anything, but yet they want me to. I don't recognize Laura's mental disabilities according to them, so
Mhm.
therefore I'm mental.
Oh,
That's exactly what they said.
and that's what they do. They spin it back on you.
Exactly.
But my counselor didn't even agree that I was mental. It's
Mhm.
only their government doctor.
Right. Yeah, we were doing counseling with the family and stuff, just to try to make things better because the boys were getting kind of out of control.
Mhm.
And of course, those counselors died during COVID, so we didn't have that anymore. So Trenton was told to get counseling for his anger management.
Mhm.
Never made him go to one.
Mhm.
The judge ordered counseling for Sarah and the both of us. Never made one appointment.
And that's been 2 years.
Yeah, it's been 2 years. 2 years, and not one counseling appointment. This has been the plan all along. It kept saying reunification, but yet there was not one step of reunification at all on CPS's part. They've done nothing but tear us apart. Nothing. And nobody's ever talked to Sarah because Sarah will tell the truth. See, the
Mhm.
boys lie. Sarah will tell the truth, but they don't. That's why they don't want us talking to her. They don't want us to know what she knows, and she knows the truth.
Mhm.
And instead of saying I abused her, I hit her, why don't you just ask the girl yourself
Mhm.
instead of listening to somebody? Even the doctor, that forensic mental, whatever you want to call her, she said, "So why did you hit Sarah?"
Mhm.
And I said, "I've never hit Sarah." She said, "Well, that's what she told me." I said, "No, you're making this up." And we kept saying we're told not to talk to her about the case. Why not? Don't you want to know the truth? So we finally asked Sarah one visit, and she said, "I've never said that." I said, "Well, that's what they said.
Mhm.
They don't go on facts; they go on hearsay.
Right.
That's just the
Lies.
way they work.
Right.
Because if you went on facts, all their cases would get fallen apart."
Right. Who were your judges?
Judge Dawn
Gray, Lonneman-Blair.
Gray, Lonneman-Blair.
Is that the only one you had?
Yes.
Trenton had Shoemaker,
Well, that's Trenton.
but when he hit you,
Yeah, when Trenton hit me and had to go to court, well, he did it on a Zoom because he was still in juvenile.
Mhm.
Um, His judge was what?
Shoemaker was the last
Shoemaker.
name.
And this judge, Dawn Gray Lonneman-Blair, was she the one that TPR'd your daughter?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's so corrupt.
It is. It is, and they're listening to two boys that wanted nothing but freedom, no rules. So they made all this stuff up. They don't look to the fact that Trenton has been institutionalized 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler's been institutionalized a couple times himself. Are you going to believe everything these kids say? But they did because it fit their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it fits what they want to do, they'll go with it.
What a shame.
It is. But we're not going away.
I'm glad you're being persistent. That's what needs to happen with parents. They need to be persistent.
Well, I think that's why they drag it out, because they think, well, the parents just going to give up. We're not giving up.
Be sure to tell her how close Sophia and Sarah were, like 3 months apart, and they haven't seen each other for 2 years.
I'll just tell her.
You can talk. You can talk.
So my husband has a granddaughter that was born in February. So my husband has a granddaughter that was born February 2nd of 2016, and our daughter was born May 2nd of 2016. So there's exactly 3 months between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And they grew up being very close.
Oh.
And then CPS came in, and she has not seen her niece for 2 years now. Bob did actually get to see him at his sister's funeral. So hopefully we're on the repair there, no thanks to CPS or anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's just, we went from having 2 houses, a pool in the backyard. I had all the neighborhood kids over my house all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had a couple that lived next door. We had 2 or 3, 2 doors down, one across the street, one down the way. A little autistic boy that my boys didn't like because he wouldn't knock. He just walked in our door. But, I worked with autistic kids, so I was kind of used to that.
Yeah.
We had a pool in the backyard, All these parents were perfectly fine with me having their kids all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I took them to church. I taught Sunday school at church. We started a program at church called SIS, for children that were lacking a parent, for little girls. And then my husband did KOZ for the boys, which was Kids Outdoor Zone, that didn't have both parents or were in hardships, so that they could go fishing or, and we would do arts and crafts and spa days with the girls, but the boys would do fishing and hunting and, scout stuff kind of like, so it was perfect for him. So, I mean, it's just, to go from that to having like nobody, because they are just CPS is just like an abuser. I was in the Center for Women and Families for 9 months. And one of the things you learn is that they isolate you from everybody. That is exactly what CPS has come in and done. They isolated us from everyone, because Bob's oldest son could have probably taken our daughter if he didn't think we were going to be some pain in the asses.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, if he didn't hear all the lies. And then, when it's coming from like a government source and it must be true.
Mm.
I mean, if people have not been through CPS, and I see it on Facebook and different things, they're putting down, well, why don't they ever look at themselves? I've always looked in the mirror. I mean, this has nothing to do with how we've parented, or it has to do with being creditors and money and getting federal money. It
Right.
has nothing to do with my child's best interest.
Mm-hmm.
They won't admit that, and they just keep going in and tearing you apart in court. And it's psychological abuse is what I'm going through.
It
I mean,
is.
they can keep saying I'm mental all day long, but they're trying to make me mental.
Mhm.
Who gives you who in their right mind gives you a forensic mental evaluation when they've ripped your baby from your arms? Are you supposed to be mentally okay? Are you
Oh,
supposed
yeah.
to be mentally okay in that moment?
Oh,
Because that's their trick. Let's rip the kid away and oh, everybody's mental. I mean, I've
yeah.
talked to thousands of moms. They're all mental.
Yeah. I was too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's their another thing a trick they pull. That's
To
just another,
isolate so
yes,
they can
isolate.
have control.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they have like 98, 96% um, success rate. Even in taking our kids, it's not just in criminal court, it's in
Mhm.
taking our kids too. Because courts are not set up for the people. They're not ran by we the people. I mean, this is not
Right. They're illegitimate courtrooms.
exactly. If they're going to take anybody's child, there should be a trial by jury and not one of these juries that they're setting up that the judge is in, because that's even taken place. It's
Mhm.
just the total corruption of it and the degradation of our families here in America. Everybody. I mean,
Mhm.
if you attack the family is the cornerstone of society. Are they trying to make us collapse? Because that's what it seems like, attacking all the families.
Right. I agree with you. That's why I'm very glad you came on the podcast to talk about all of this. I know it's hard to relive all this. This is terrible. And I don't know what the answer is other than abolish family court and CPS.
That's what everybody's saying. They have to be liquidated. I
Mhm.
mean, if you really go all the way back to the Magna Carta, I mean, when they start doing this kind of stuff, we're supposed to be able to liquidate them. And
Right.
the reason why they are continuing is because there's no slapping their hand when they put it in the cookie jar. There's no consequences for them. They get
No.
to keep doing, they have immunity. Why do these people have immunity? I straight up called my judge out and wrote a claim and said, I am charging you, Dawn Gray Blair, because Lonneman was her maiden name, but on her official court papers, she's just Dawn Lonneman-Blair.
Mhm.
But I did Dawn Gray Blair because that's her legal name, the best to my knowledge, first, middle, and last. And I said, who sometimes acts as a judge
Mhm.
because it is so wrong that they get to get up there and have complete immunity and destroy families. I mean, this is acts of war. Taking people's kids is an act of war. If this happened in the old times, I mean, you want to talk, there would have been wars being had. You didn't mess with people's children. I
No.
don't know what's made us so complacent that and I know a lot of it, like for me, I didn't realize I didn't have to speak to CPS. I didn't know CPS had to have a warrant.
Mhm.
I didn't know all kinds of things, and they do take advantage of your ignorance.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
don't inform you. They don't have to give you legal advice. It's like they're the joker. They're waiting to get you in a joke any way they can.
I mean, I fell for it too. So, I mean, you can't beat yourself up. It's I unfortunately let them in too, and I'm sorry I ever did that. But it took its course the way it was going to go anyway because they all had it rigged.
Right.
How
But a
can
lot of people have success stories by not even opening the door to them. And that's my advice to anybody now. I'm like, you realize you don't have to talk to them. Don't even talk to them.
Mhm.
Because, I thought, well, we're both good, reasonable, honorable, peaceful people. We have nothing to hide.
Right,
It's,
right,
it's not about hiding anything. They're going to make it up.
right. That's just correct. That's very correct. Now, I mean, if people have any questions, how can they contact you?
Um, they can contact me at my email. It's Laura Domek 77 at Gmail. That's LAURA, D as in dog, O as in oval, M as in man, E as in elephant, K as in king, 77 at Gmail.
I thank you both for coming on and educating all of us on what can happen, because some people think it will never happen to them until it does.
That's what I thought too.
Right, right, right. Oh, well,
I
hang
just want to ask if people could, pray for us and pray for our unity with our daughter.
definitely. I know there's a lot of people praying. I pray over this whole podcast. It's just so, CPS just needs to be completely liquidated, as you said.
Yeah, we need something else. It needs to be still something for the severely, because there are a few, but
Mhm.
it's not anywhere near. And I'm just saying that just because I did work with kids. We had to call one time because one of our autistic children that was nonverbal came in with fungus on her feet for like a month straight. We ended up putting them in bleach, and we eventually had to call because it became a medical concern, and now, like, that was way back in 2002. Now I would even be scared to call for that.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I trust them none whatsoever.
Hmm.
But we did back then call because, she had a fungal infection on her feet that they weren't taking her to the doctor for. But, you're talking 20 years ago.
Right.
But, there needs to be more regulation, if anything, and our constitutional rights. I mean, because
Yeah.
they keep taking our constitutional rights away and saying that it's for safety.
Yeah. And
We
there's no oversight whatsoever.
exactly. Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, I'd like to have you come back on for an update when, you're able
When
to.
we get her back.
Yes, yes. So, hey, don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and you can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And I totally thank you, Bob and Laura Domek, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.